So, I know you guys are all waiting for the theory crafting stuff for the new patch, and that is gonna come soon enough, I promise. I have a very, very, very long list of things to go to. But I can also tell you what happened. I played a lot of SMITE yesterday. I played so much SMITE, in fact, that I didn't even get around to actually making a video other than uploading some of the gameplays from that day. Normally that's not exactly my schedule. Normally I play my games and then I make my video, but yesterday I was like, I just want to keep playing. And that is something that really hasn't happened to me in a long time. That's not to say that I didn't have fun with SMITE when I played it, but it didn't have me that hooked because, I've been playing the game for a long time, so it's understandable that I don't have that initial new game fix anymore, normally. That changed at least yesterday, and I like to take the time to appreciate that. And I like to take the time to point that out, because I think it's worth pointing out when you really enjoy something way more than normally and you see a lot of improvements, and I think this is one of those moments. No, this wouldn't be me if it wouldn't come with some level of constructive criticism as well, and we'll get to that in this video too, of course. But generally speaking, I have to say that I haven't enjoyed SMITE Conquest specifically this much in a very, very long time. So when I ask in the title of this video, how good is SMITE? Then it's more of a, how good is SMITE right now? Rather than a, how good is SMITE right now? And I know that's maybe not something some of you want to hear, because generally speaking, the internet just thrives off any negative drama stuff, but in this case, I'll say it anyways. I was going to say I haven't enjoyed SMITE Conquest this much since the beginning of Season 5, when it really had major changes. But thinking back, I don't actually think I enjoyed Season 5 that much, because I honestly never liked the new map all that much. Especially visually, I liked the old map better when we still had the beach with the crabs and everything, and I kind of want that back, to be honest. But I did like some of the layout changes, so it wasn't terrible or anything. But honestly, right now, I feel more like I felt when I played SMITE in Season 2, when the first new Conquest map came out. And that's because all the changes, in my opinion, just hit the right spot this time. Something that I rarely see. I rarely see changes that are so on the mark in really any game. Normally it comes with some pros and a lot of cons or something, but in this case, I'm very, very happy. And I can talk about this from various perspectives as well. For the last roughly 2 splits, I was maining support. I was still playing other roles occasionally, especially if I needed specific content for a video, but I was primarily playing support. And I was also primarily playing Joust because SMITE Oceanic had this whole stutter issue and everything. Yesterday, for the first time in a very long time, I actually had interest in playing all the different roles just to see how they feel after the changes, and I basically did that. The only one that I haven't played yet is mid lane. And you can be sure that's going to happen soon enough, because there's some things I really want to try in mid lane. And I can confidently say that many roles are just way more interesting. The first one is solo lane. Solo lane is so much more varied now. Because Warrior's Blessing was kind of overhauled and we got rid of a lot of the sustain items. You can now play warriors, but you can also play mages, you can also play assassins, you can also play guardians. Really completely up to you. Yes, there will be some warriors that will definitely fall off, especially if they don't have any inherent sustain. That is going to be an issue, and maybe they will need some buffs, but maybe they can also be shifted into jungle or support depending on who they are. So that's something we'll have to see. But in general, there's so much more happening solo lane. And what I saw from a lot of people that main solo lane is that they're saying they can actually do things in the laning phase. There are actually fights going on in solo lane. There's actually kill potential, because not everyone constantly heals up between all the pots and blessings and shields that they have. You can bully your opponent out hard enough that you can go for easy proxies and do rotations from there, that you can go for more invades, and that you can get ganks that actually achieve something. I think those changes are great. I think that makes solo so much more interesting, because for the longest time, really, it was just a farm fest. Kind of the reverse idea of ADC. You just sit there and farm with very little kills, and your end goal is just to get very tanky in late game, whereas an ADC would try and achieve a lot of damage in late game. And that was not interesting in my opinion. And I think the changes now allow you so much more varied playstyles with more varied characters, and I think that's fantastic. And that brings us to ADC. ADC is also something I want to talk about. I think ADC just has way more interesting build variety, and with that comes way more guard variety as well. There are most certainly some that are very overtuned at the moment, but that is not my main point here. For the longest time, it was just Heimdall and Jing Wei over and over and over, at least on a competitive level. And even below that, you would see them a lot or banned a lot at least. So that was boring too. Now you're gonna run into a Medusa, a Cupid, a Neith, a Freya, a Kronos, whatever, I don't know. They can all be played in different ways now. They will all have levels of viability that they didn't have before, and some of them will be too viable, of course, too strong. But generally speaking, again, a lot more variety in how the lane feels, and with that also comes a lot more variety in how the later stages of the game feel. Because with the characters that you were playing before, you were very limited in how exactly they play, whereas some of the other characters that can go more into that lane now have a lot more interesting potential. Especially characters like Cupid, like Medusa with their big teamfight ultimates that can go into relatively ability-focused builds, just have a completely different impact on different stages of the game. And then we also have Neith, who obviously has completely different impact on different stages of the game. And you also have picks that have to be counterplayed differently, like for example, those who come with lifesteal, heavy lifesteal, or those who are magical ADCs. You just have to either build against magical damage or you have to build against healing. And then there's jungle. We are seeing so many gods in jungle that haven't been in jungle for a very long time, or at least not very effective. We are going to see a lot of AA gods, that is for sure, but we're also going to see very interesting ability gods. Set is one that comes to mind. And we're going to see very different builds from before as well, because they, again, have a lot of potential. Also something that I'll talk about in a lot more detail soon. The camps feel more interesting, and you actually have to pay a little bit of attention to them and to what they do, so that you can disrupt certain ones of that and all these other little effects that have some sort of impact at least. And also, as much as I dislike the idea of the jungle shrine, at least it's no longer super annoying, and super annoying especially for those who don't have quick basic attacks. You just walk by and hit it once, done. Way more fun than just having to hit it 3 times every single time you want to clear that thing out. And I'm sure I'm going to eat my words on this one eventually, but I'm also happy about gods like Ao Kuang coming back that just haven't been meta for a very long time. Might be too much meta now, but again, it's just bringing something fresh into the very stale jungle game, and I'm actually very much interested in playing jungle as my main role again at this point, which I did not think would happen for a very long time, at least until Season 8. And let's look at support. Now, I know a lot of you think that, oh god, our tanks are going to be too squishy now, there's too much pen in the game, supports are going to blow up. I understand that concern, and I do think there are certain items that definitely contribute to that. We'll talk about that towards the end of this video. But I also think that it's a bit overblown in some regards at the moment, especially if you were building high defense before. Titan's Bane would still chunk a decent amount of that, Executioner would still chunk a decent amount of that, more effectively than some of the pen items do now. So really, the old Executioner Titan's Bane combo I think was almost undervalued in terms of how much they could take off your protections and how little your protections were actually worth. And outside of that, there are different ways to build supports beyond just going full defense. There are health builds, again something I'll talk about in detail soon, that will be a lot more effective now, especially with changed items as well. There are certain hybrid items like the new Sledge that is super interesting for those type of like warrior supports, and all kinds of other stuff that you can implement into your build even to go more aggressive in terms of magical damage. I was running Spear of the Magus on PTS a fair bit, and it was actually really fun. It was a really interesting playstyle that I think is most certainly worth looking at now, along with others. And I will analyze that, I will break down the numbers for you, but I can tell you that support is not going to be super boring now all of a sudden, and you're not always just going to get blown up. There are some guys that will need nerfs that are just too effective against supports right now, but doesn't mean that the game is over for supports. And as we're talking about Spear of the Magus, let's talk about the mid laners. I haven't actually played any mid laners yet, again, I already said that, but I do think that their item changes were also very, very interesting and at least give them some more variety, either by going into heavy power items first, or by triple building flat pen, or by just leaving out one of the pen items and going for the more effective choice in that specific situation. I don't think we've seen the end of things for mages yet. I think another flat pen option for them would still make them more interesting, so there's more variety in that regard. Somebody in my comments actually recently suggested something like a magical crusher, which I think would be very interesting. I know that Mage's Blessing kind of has that, but more of a pen item with some tick damage. I think that would be cool. I think that would be an interesting counter to some gods as well. But either way, it still opens up a lot more variety, and we also saw some other items connected to that are changed that could be very interesting. Especially if we see hunters back in middle lane, or we see mages maybe move to solo a little bit, then I would love to see more use of tyrannical playtime as well. It would be very interesting to see how effective that item can actually be too. Unless you're facing a golden blade assassin, then it's probably not that fun. And those are just the changes to the roles. There are more things regarding Conquest that we could look at here, but I want to wait up a little bit more with those ones because I want to see how things develop in general regarding, for example, the structure push meta and all that kind of stuff. But we'll wait for that a little bit. Of course, it's also absolutely fantastic that in Oceanic we no longer have the stutter on our servers. We can actually play normally. Not sure what's the case for Southeast Asia right now. I think that's still being worked on. Talk to ZiSotto on Twitter about that if you want to know the details and want to forward him some information. But again, generally speaking, very good developments there. They're definitely getting those bugs under control too. Now, of course, there are still some things that I would like to see addressed. So one of the cons are the tank issues that many people are bringing up at the moment. Like I said, I think there are ways around that. I think there are interesting options that you can use instead and go for different playstyles. But I do think that tanks would deserve a little bit more from this patch. I think a lot of characters got so much from this patch, and tanks got relatively little in comparison. So I think it would be fair to give them some interesting stuff as well. Maybe something that counters burst or crit, something that replaces Height of the Enemy line in a different way than the new version does. That would be cool. That's just my thought on that. But I don't think it's inherently terrible with the state that we have now. I just think there could be some cool stuff going on for them as well. And then we have a few items that are just too good in my opinion right now. The first is Ring of Hecate. That just has everything for such a cheap price, and I don't know. That item is just super bloated. I think it should be fine to keep that as an early game item. I think that's the purpose, to give you this base item so mage ADCs come online a little bit quicker. But if that's the case, then I think the stats need to be nerfed. I think the lifesteal needs to be nerfed. I think the attack speed needs to be nerfed, and maybe even the power part of it, just so that it actually feels fair as an early game item, because right now it's just very, very overwhelming. And right now the item also doesn't really have a weak spot due to the percentage power steal, so it's strong in early game due to the base stats, and then it's strong in late game due to the passive. So I think it needs some weak point somewhere in order to feel fair, and I think that is just turning down the base stats a little bit. So if you go for it early, then it feels good enough as an early game item. It feels better than the items you currently have, but it doesn't make you like a beast the moment you get it. The next one is Atalanta's bow, which is scary on hunters in general, and especially scary on Medusa because she can basically just walk with normal movement speed if she uses that thing. And I think that's the flat pen on that item. 20% flat pen on that item, in my opinion, with all the other stats that it has, still feels entirely misplaced. And I know that Hi-Rez wants to keep an item for hunters that they can effectively build with 20% flat pen, but I don't think it should be Atalanta's because Atalanta's just does so many other things. It shouldn't be the core item for every hunter because then it's just too effective. Giving this item a 10% pen instead of 20 also would mean that there's a lot more build variety for hunters and other characters picking up this item in general, because you can just fit in more other percentage pen items without wasting stats on that. And I think that would be completely fair. I think Atalanta's just does too much. And to offset that, I think that Executioner should just be reworked a little bit more. I think Executioner should just become a pen item. The pen item for ADCs, essentially. So give Executioner 20% flat pen, and then, I don't know, maybe keep part of the passive so it still has some protection reduction as well, even though that doesn't inherently synergize in itself at that point anymore. Or just give it some more pen for the first few basics or something. But anything that makes that the prime option if you're just looking for raw percentage pen on hunters. That makes a lot more sense because the item was designed around pen or shred, but effectively the main purpose remains the same between the two. You just want to get through the tanks quicker. And honestly, I don't think most ADCs ever particularly cared about reducing the enemy's protections more than they did about just getting through the enemy protections themselves. No offense to carry players, but I don't think most of them are particularly team play focused. And then last but not least, Spear of the Magus just needs outright nerfs in my opinion. I think the passive is just too much between what it can do for the mage using it and then everyone else as well. Maybe just make it like Shaman's Ring where it only affects the mage themselves and then keep the flat pen on it though, or reduce the value a little bit so it's a little bit more even with the other pen items, because it's just a little bit too much in my opinion. It's a little bit too consistent throughout the game this way as well. It doesn't really have an early or late point or anything. But yeah, these are just minor criticisms, all things considered, that are relatively easy to fix, and I have brought multiple of them up before. So overall, I don't think these are issues that make the game unplayable or horrible or anything at all. and I do think that the positive changes heavily outweigh that, and even these items I think are enjoyable, they just need to be fine-tuned a little bit more. So I'm very happy with all of this, and I wanted to express that in detail in a video just to summarize my current feelings on SMITE and what's going on right now, because I really like it. I know I kind of brushed up on this with my recent video where I said that now is the best time to start playing SMITE, but it's something different to say that before the patch comes out or during the patch when all the changes are kind of happening, or after having played some matches on the new patch. So I can confidently say that I think SMITE Conquest specifically has improved a lot, and I do think that a lot of these changes also transfer over to other game modes because you have all the same item changes and everything. So the vast majority of this is generally applicable in most of SMITE, which I think is very cool. By the way, if you're playing in Australia or New Zealand, Oceanic region, stay tuned for tomorrow's video. I hopefully get it done tomorrow. That's going to be interesting for you. There's going to be 2 videos probably if everything works out. And other than that, if you're new to the channel, hit the sub button and maybe the bell so you get notified of all the upcoming SMITE content, all the info content, everything for the new patch. I still have such a long list to go through. I can't remember the last time I had such a long list, and my list has always been super long, but now it's even longer. I don't know if I'm ever even gonna get half of this done. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you for the next one soon. ZiSotto, out.